Hello, this is Neil from masterpaintingnow.com, and I have this free tips for you. So this is a student of mine on Udemy on my course, anatomy course. I have two anatomy courses, a 64-hour long one, and then the more condensed version, which has all the same information. It's my latest course, Anatomy 2.0, which goes through all the muscles, how they stretch, how they move, where they attach, all that kind of, fat buildup, all that kind of stuff. So it's a really good course. And it's only 14 hours long, but it doesn't, because it's not in real time, it doesn't lose information. The other one's just really long because it's in real time like a lecture. So, and that's what happened to this first lesson. It was just way too long. So I'm going to redo this again, and hopefully it'll be better this time. Usually when I second go around, my gets a little bit better. So a couple things I just want to point out with this pose that could be better. So one thing is, notice that when you take a straight line from like the buttocks upward, that the shoulders and the hips are about even. And that's pretty much the case here. You can see that if I draw straight lines up, it's about even. That's about what is here, because she's kind of leaning to the side a little bit. But there's something in here, the ratio between here, where the love handles would be, and the ratio here seems quite large. Because if you see the ratio here versus the ratio here, it doesn't seem, that triangle doesn't seem as big. And so basically, what we can do is I would come out a little less and I'd start up higher like that. And so, and also think about this line right here. That's about where you can do that on both photos right there, where the neck and the traps kind of meet right here. That's where the starts to come out the widest point, then it starts coming back in again. And I can do white here if you can see that right there. See that? So that widest part right there, then it comes inward. So it's kind of important to know like kind of how I would kind of come right here like that widest part right there and kind of cut that off just a little bit. Something like so. So something about like that. It's a tiny, change, but when it comes to human anatomy, sometimes those tiny changes can really make a big difference. And right here, I would come down more like about like this right here. And so remember that you have this sacrum right here, right? And there's a couple things I want to keep in mind. So when we're thinking about, and I did this in the first one, so I don't know if we need to show a picture of it, but it kind of goes like this. This is the basic shape of the hip bone, right, from the back side. That same kind of heart shape with that triangle in the front, and you have these two parts that come off like that, which aren't important. Boom, right? So that's the basic shape. It's like this heart shape, and there's this triangle you can put in between the heart. And on top of this is where you get the love handles, right? So the love handles actually build on top of this. And I like to think of the back kind of like this, because it usually has this kind of shape like this, where the shadow is and everything. And that's like where the rib cage is, right? And the love handles come up and they attach up to the rib cage. So up like this, right? So that would be more, and what I like to imagine is this shape that kind of comes into there. So imagine this is like your rib cage shape right here. So you have that oval shape. And then I cut into the oval shape like this, and then I come down, and I just imagine this shape coming all the way down like this to the widest part, which is the crotch line, which would actually be here. Because remember, where the buttocks come down like that, they come down lower than the crotch line. From the front view, this would be the crotch line. About right here would be the crotch line. And you have this gap, this space between from the back view where the buttocks are. That's why if you draw someone from the front view, and you have this being their crotch line here, and you have the legs kind of coming out like this, let's say, and this leg's kind of coming out like over here, sometimes you can see the buttocks, behind the crotch like that. Sometimes you can see the buttocks like that because they're actually lower. Right, so that's the basic shape I think about. Actually, I'm going to try to back up here so I don't have to erase so much. Cool. Anyway, so that's the basic shape I like to think about. And oftentimes, this right here will just run right into that widest part right there, which is where your bones stick out, right? So you have your femur bone, and it kind of comes out like this. It's actually more at an angle, so I didn't quite put that up high enough. So it's, I don't know, actually it would be right about here. And then it kind of comes in like that. And it kind of comes in like this, right? So that would be kind of how it is. This would be a little bit thinner. You get the idea. So I'm going to start erasing some of this in the middle now. And another thing to think about is you have like, think about this, the shape of the buttocks kind of coming up like this. And then when you think about the love handles, you can also think about them as like a tire that kind of just, that kind of fits on like this. And then it kind of comes up like this, the fat. If you want to think about how the fat forms on there, it's kind of like this right here. That would be how that tire kind of fits on there. It's kind of like that shape right there. Very similar to the shape that we use to just draw both breasts onto the body. Right, so like that. And when a woman gains weight in her love handles, like she's like thin, like my wife, but if she starts to gain weight in the love handles kind of, they don't go like this like a guy. Like a guy, his love handles kind of build up more like that. The female kind of comes down at more at an angle, so it's more like this, right? And so you can sometimes see this from the back side when she starts getting a little bit of weight like that, right? So it starts looking like this here. But anyway, we'll make her to where there's not really any weight there. And we're just gonna kind of flow this shape. I want to add just a little bit of distinction. You can kind of see the hips. So the hips kind of look like, from this view, they kind of go like this and they kind of down like that. So you can kind of see that side just a little bit. She's kind of turning to the side a little bit here. We're just kind of adding a little bit of a twist to her. And because of that, the spine is going to kind of go like this, just a little bit like that. So you can see how we've changed it just a little bit, but that change is quite enough to make the difference. Think about where the scapula is, right? Kind of goes like this. And now it's had to be at an angle, right? And I described this in the other lesson, but when the arm is raised, so when the arm's not raised, the scapula kind of comes like this more, straight down, and then it kind of comes like that. But when you raise the arm up, the collarbone and the scapula go up like this, right? And the collarbone from this side goes over there. And so then it kind of comes out, and oftentimes you'll have this, it sticks out right there a little bit. So sometimes you can actually see where it's sticking out a little bit. And you kind of see on her right here, you can see, imagine the scapula right here, you can kind of see right here, boom, right? You can see where the scapula is kind of pushing out. You have this little bit of push out right there. And the other pose I did before, you can see it a lot better because I had her like much more propped up on one leg. I wanted to go more closer to this right here. And then you would have, so think about that shape right here. Actually, let's go up a little bit higher like this where the deltoid is. Then we're going to kind of come in just a little bit right here, and that will be like the scapula. Like that. You won't be able to see it too much from this view anyway. And actually where the breast is right there looks fine. And I'm going to, this does need to be a little bit wider, but I'm going to kind of come, there we go, about like that. So you see it's that little bit of difference, and it's really adding those love handles into that makes a lot of difference. It makes her not look so thin right here. See all that space right here that was missing, and right here? Right, so by adding that in there, we now have that, you know, more proper shape there. And let's see if this looks right here. Sorry about the dog in the background. We kind of come with the neck right here. That's going to be the trapezius muscles, which will come down like this. So the head's not quite turned enough to see the full side view of the face. Like here you can see the full side view. She drew it where you can't see the full side view. And you'd have the head. Right, so there you have it. And then we can draw the buttocks, which I think look good here. I'm going to kind of do that kind of more flat line like they have, like she has, because it actually looks better. So about like that. And you kind of see this, you should be able to see that you have the Sartorius. So from the front view of the legs, if you imagine here's the hips here, you have the leg, you have the love handle, and then you have the leg coming off here. Just imagine this basic shape. Attached, you have the Sartorius, which kind of comes like this. It's that long, thin muscle, like that. And then these are the adductor groups that makes this kind of triangle shape here. And it kind of comes like that. It comes down lower than the knee, so the knee would be like right about here. That line that kind of creates this like S shape right here, that's what you can see. That's what creates this inner, the medial side or the inside shape of the leg like that. That's what gives that shape. Right, so even from the back side, you're still going to have that shape right there of the thigh. So let's go ahead and put that in. And also you're going to have a little bit of, if we draw this nude and not with pants on, you're going to have this fatty tissue that kind of comes out like this, and it kind of comes in, and then you're going to have the other muscle, Sartorius, which kind of adds that. That's where about the knee is going to be. Then you have a little bit like this, so it's going to be like that. This leg's kind of coming in front of the other leg, and this leg's like coming toward it. That's why it's overlapping the leg on the left-hand side. Right, so when you have it like that, you get something that looks a little more accurate, right? Because it's a little more beefy in here. So just remember, the main shape I like to think about is after you have this triangle, right? And the triangle fits right between the butt. So if you think about the butt, I'm going to get rid of this right here and this right here. If you think about the butt shape, right, it has that kind of shape like that. Right? You have these butt muscles right here. So if you think about that shape, you have the triangle shape right here. The love handles, if you kind of come up like, they kind of come at an angle like this, and they kind of come in like that, right around that, right? They kind of have, it's like an upside down heart. And that's kind of how the love handles fit in there. And as a woman gains weight, she'll have her love handles here, and then she'll have another line of fat right here, which is often that stubborn fat you might have when you wear your bikini and stuff, and from the back you don't like how it pinches right there. Only way to get rid of that is just burning calories. Right, so there you have it. Something I did talk about in the last video, I want to just briefly talk about here as well, make a new layer, is the overall shape of, like, you have the pelvic bone here where the love handle attaches to. And it kind of makes this heart shape. And remember this heart shape here, I want to end it right about there because that's where the crotch line is. Right, then you have the two parts of the pelvis that come like that. We're not going to draw that part. Then you have this part right here, which is like the sacral part where that connects to the spine, and then it starts to come down. It creates this like point, right? So you think about this like really thin kind of heart shape here. And then think about the butt itself, the fat tissue that attaches onto the body here, and kind of overlap and overlay these two. And you kind of get this butterfly shape. So if you think about that butterfly shape, just make sure that butterfly shape finds its way into your drawings. And then just to make sure this is clear, I want to go over this part right here just one more time again, what's happening from the back view. So from the back view, you have the love handles, right, that are coming out right here. So we think about those. Boom, we want to make sure we put those in there, and you can think about that whole entire three-dimensional shape, you know, kind of drawing on both sides of it, and then you can erase what you don't need. Right, so we got that in there. We got the triangle. So right here on each side of the triangle, that's where you have your dimples. So if you're going to have some sacral dimples, they're going to be right there. This part right here, this is about where the shadow would begin in the back. That's where that kind of bend happens. And then often this kind of comes out so that from the side view, you have like your spine here, then you have your back here like that, then you have the leg coming down, right? So if you think about that right there, boom, when the light's coming, this part right here is in shadow, but the light then starts to hit this top part as it comes back out again. So right here, as it starts to come back out again, the light starts to hit that. And that's why you have that shadow in the back like that, depending on the angle of the light, obviously. And oftentimes so I think about that, then oftentimes where you'll get the kind of fatty of the sacral dimples and be right about here. A little bit bigger than the actual triangle we draw. That's usually where the shadows would actually be. And then like so. And then sometimes I'm going to just kind of come more straight down, because that's kind of more how the buttocks are. Just going to kind of come partly there. There we go. Sometimes you might be able to see like a little bit of like shadow here. It's not like an actual, you don't want to draw lines. Just like a little bit of shadow right there. Okay, so you have the love handles coming here. We can imagine that shape. And then you have the hips, right? So the love handles come and they attach to the hip. And the hip kind of comes from this side, like right about here. Right? Because remember, that's that, boom, that's that part of the hip bone right there. We can see, you can actually feel, it actually comes more like this. But anyway, you can feel the edge of that hip bone kind of pushing against there. And so from the front view, it's kind of like this. You kind of draw almost like straight lines like this, right? And this come down to the crotch line, and it kind of comes up like this where the love handles are, right? Like that, and then that kind of attaches to the rib cage. So if you kind of think about this, and then you, and also that shape I was talking about. Hold on, real quick. I want to show this. I always get sidetracked, but that shape I was talking about, it's very similar for how you can draw the breast. Right? You kind of draw this kind of overall three-dimensional shape where you want the breast to be. It kind of comes up like that, and then you can, start to add individual. But that shape is that same shape I just showed for the back fat here for the love handles. Anyway, it's kind of like that, right? And then where the legs start to attach, it starts to come out, right? Depending on, how, because remember the widest part is not the hip, but where that bone sticks out right there, the femur, right? And it's the fulcrum right there of the femur that sticks out the most. And that's the widest part. So from the front view, you still have that same shape I talked about, right? Remember this basic shape right here. And so it's like boom, and then it comes into the leg, and then if the legs are coming in, you can kind of see that shape, right? You can have the Sartorius muscles like that. So that's that basic shape, and the belly button lies right in the middle of the love handle. So if that's the love handles, right, well, right about here, right? These are the love handles. So from the front view, you kind of think love handles like that. Then the belly button's right in the middle of that, right? So you imagine that's the bottom and top love handles. The belly button falls right in the middle. So it's a good landmark to memorize. And then you have, the abdominal muscles, which come down to about here. You have that kind of, that right there, it'll all be in shadow. So you get the idea, right? So that's the basic shape there. And then from the back view, remember, because the crotch line, the buttocks is like here, right? It's a little bit lower than the crotch line. So you think about this right here being the crotch line. And so you think about kind of shapes like that, right? And that comes up to the love handle from the front view. Boom, like that. Then you think about this being the kind of hip bone right there. And then the legs, so remember that's like this shape right here. So you kind of have, you can do this more up and down like this. It's like that shape. It's like this shape like this. Try to make this really dark, right? Except, we're kind of putting it out a little bit more because from the back view, you can't really see it as much. But that's the hip. And then you have, from there, so the leg kind of comes out. So sometimes you can actually see where the leg is going to come out here, and then it kind of, connects onto sometimes the leg will kind of curve in a little bit because of the hip, and you'll have more of a shape like that. It really just depends on the person, how much fat they have. So sometimes you can get a shape more like this. Boom, and it kind of comes in right here because it kind of comes like that, kind of comes more straight, and then it starts coming out again like that. You get a shape like that. So if you're wondering why that shape is there, that's why. Like if you see it on a thinner model and you're wondering, how come they have that shape? Boom, that's the widest part right there, where right about there, right? That's where well, if we think about this overall, shape of the bone there, then you have the femur sticking out like that. Let's go ahead and get rid of some of this now. Anyway, so in the other video, I drew a kind of different separate pose, and I'm like, you know what, that's probably not gonna be as helpful. I didn't actually share it with the student yet. I was thinking about it. I'm like, you know what, one, that video is too long, and then two, I should probably just kind of stick more with what they did rather than come up with a whole new pose. And that way it makes more sense what I'm trying to tell them, I'm gonna make this deltoid up a little bit higher here. And then we'll kind of come like that. And there's all kinds of more detail, we can add to it that I kind of went over in the first one, but there we go. I think that's fine. And remember, so we have that just a slight turn in the spine here. Not much, but there's a little bit of a turn. I went over a lot of the shading and stuff in the first video, and so I don't know if I really need to go over that again. Just know if the light's coming from that side, this is a dip, so we'd have the light coming inside of this dip right here. And then this side here would be the actual light side of that dip. So that's come like this, and we dip in and out like that. So this side would be the side we add the shadow to, but this is the opposite for the dip. I described it as a sphere. You have a sphere here. This would be the terminal. This is the side because the light's coming from the right-hand side and from up and toward us a little bit. So the light is kind of like this. So it's kind of toward us, above, and to the right of the object. If we make a dip right here, this is a dip that dips into this thing, then the shadow is going to be on this side, the opposite side, as the form shadow, which is over here. And that's what creates that, makes it look like an actual dip is going inside. If it were a bump coming out, but the spine's a dip, so it comes like this, and the spine dips in and comes back out again. If the spine were to dip, but it were an actual thing that stuck out, then you'd keep the shadows the same. So if you had like a cylinder like this, and instead of having a dip in the cylinder, you have this kind of part that's coming out, so it goes like this, comes out. Then you'd have the core shadow over here of the actual cylinder, and then you'd have another shadow on that piece right there. So it looks like it goes boom like that, which would be just form on top of form. Let's kind of get rid of some of this, some of these marks. Want to overlap that just a little bit, not much, just a little bit like that. Right, so I wanted to really show you can see the difference like that, where you can see the love handle, the hip, and then where the leg comes out to the femur bone there. Really wanted to show that change. Let's kind of redo this just a little bit here. Like so. I'm going to kind of shade all this here. I'm going to kind of also put a little bit of shadow right there for that lower part of the back. And then we'll add some shadows here to kind of show some of the form here. So we have the shoulder there. We're going to have part of the infraspinatus, I think that muscle is called. It's the larger muscle inside of the scapula. And then it's going to kind of come like that because you have the love handle kind of pushing up into that form. And then all this right here would kind of be in shadow. You'd have a little bit of shadow here. You'd have some shadow for the neck. All the face would be in, pretty much all this face would be in shadow. All that part of the arm. Mostly just this lower part of the deltoid right there. You want to actually shade it like this because you might think like, well, this side, so why can't I just put the shadow? Like the shadow's gonna come a little bit on this side, only to about there, right? Because the light is hitting all this in here because all this is kind of being flattened, and then you have your part of the scapula right there, but you usually don't see that because there's muscles coming over this part. So you have part of the trapezius connecting into that. And sometimes you'll see a little bit of line there, but most likely not. You're going to see like more of this side of the scapula blade right here where the muscles kind of attach. So you might be able to see some of that right there. And remember the scapula is kind of coming like this. And then you have the teres minor and major. Mainly it's the teres major that kind of comes off here and kind of wraps up on here along with the latissimus dorsi, with both wrap up and over there. But you might not be able to see any of that as far as the lighting goes. But you will see maybe a little bit of that side because of the way the lighting is. And then all of this is going to kind of be in shadow down here. Just adding some very basic shadows. I don't want to get too in depth here. And then we'll add a little bit of shadow for the buttocks, like so. And this is going to be more like this. And then you're going to have a little bit of that love handle right here as well. I want to show a separation between the love handle and the buttocks because you will see that change there. You might be able to see where this sacred comes in, the sacral dimple here. Kind of comes like that. You're going to see maybe part of the shadow like that because you'll be able to see some of the, like that, maybe just a little bit of shadow on this side because this is kind of turning away from the light a little bit. And then of course you would see the shadow of the leg comes like this and it kind of comes into the knee. You would see some cast shadow here, and then you would see the form shadow. All that right there would probably be in shadow, something like that. Right, so it's a very basic shadowing. And then if you wanted to draw the pants on, you can. I'm not really sure what the thinking was, that the pants are on backwards. Someone had suggested in the comments that maybe they originally drew it from the front view and they just left the pants like that. Either way, I think it's kind of interesting. It's kind of an interesting photo. Like, well, I mean, if it were a photo, right? I think it'd be an interesting photo. Like just the I don't know, it just says something. The fact the pants are on backwards kind of says something, and it's kind of a cute picture. Kind of has that cuteness and kind of sexiness to it. But you can see here, so just making it a little bit thicker, right? Just kind of thick, make sure those love handles are in there. Making everything a little bit thicker really adds a lot to it. Now, another thing I did in the first one, I was like, well, if her weight is on this leg, she could actually have her weight kind of still evenly on both legs. That's possible. We don't know what the legs are doing down here. But one thing you could do to add interest to this pose is to have her hips or have her weight on one leg more than the other. And that would kind of put the hips at an angle. So that would be nice looking. And you can easily do that by just, well, you won't be able, I don't know if it'll be so easy, but when you first start sketching and drawing it, it's going to kind of be more like this. You have this kind of K shape on this side over here. I probably should save that where I had it before, but anyway. So you're going to have more of a stretch on this side here and more of, a condensing on this side here. And that kind of adds, and then you want to pull the leg a little bit more. But anyway, you would do that in the actual sketch stage. So you would have, you'd go, okay, I want my rib cage kind of like this here. And then I want my hips, I want them to kind of be at an angle like this, right? So you have that kind of shape, that bell shape we draw, right? Boom, like that. So now we have this kind of K shape here, and then this is right here kind of stretches like that. So then it's like, okay, cool. I like how that is. So we can kind of draw where the buttocks are going to be. And then you'd have that triangle come out here to the hips. Remember that triangle kind of forwards up to a heart, and that's what forms that hip right here. Hip, hip. And then you have love handle, which is being stretched up to the rib cage. And this one, you're going to have pinching going on. So you have a little bit of fat right here being pinched. And then the love handle is here being pinched as well. Then you'd have that hip bone come out. Then you come out to the widest part, which is there, where the crotch line would be. Probably more right about there, a little bit above where the buttocks come down. And that's where the widest part would be. And then we go, okay, well, I'm going to have the weight be on here, so that's going to push up, right? And that's going to kind of push up into all this, and so it's going to kind of push my hip up. And love handle, it's going to push the hip up, and then I'm going to have the bone right there, and then we're going to come down here, and that's where the weight's going to be on. Boom, like that. And then I want to kind of add that other shape that I can always imagine the other muscle flowing through right here. Even if we can't see it from the backside, we can see the contour of it. And then you'd have, where the calf would be there. Boom. And then we're going to bring this leg in like that. And so you can see that adds a lot of interest. And then you would have your shoulders doing whatever you want them to do. And that adds a lot of interest to the pose, I think. It really kind of kicks the butt out more. I think that just has more character than this here. And then you'd have, the arms. And I actually like this better, where the arms come out to the side more. And I think that would add a better, interesting pose. One other thing I talked about is what happens here with the foreshortening. I want to just talk about that briefly. So if you imagine from the side view, you have your rib cage here, your buttocks, your neck here, your head, right? And then where your shoulders are. So in order to do this is easy, right? But if you think what's happening here from the side view is the arms kind of coming forward like this, and then it's coming up like this, and the hands coming this way, right? So if you think about it, if you're viewing the camera like this, you're seeing a foreshortening of the arm, right? Now, if the arm is like this, straight up and down, then you see the full length of the arm, right? So let's say the length is right about here. You see the full length of the arm, right? But see, notice how much shorter the arm is here versus here. You're cutting off a big amount of the arm because you're not seeing as much of the arm. That's foreshortening, right? So think about it. This right here, the full length of the object, you're viewing it from this way. If you're angling from that way, you're seeing the full view, right, is in the camera. But if I angle this object, same length, actually, let's go ahead and let me draw on another layer. It's a little line right here. Let's go back to the layer I drew that on. And let's take this, watch this. Now we know it's the same length. We know for a fact this is the same length. But if we come like this, well, actually, hold on. I got to do one other thing on this other layer, because this doesn't have the thing that Photoshop does where I can pivot it on an angle or on a point. I can't move that point. So we go like this. So the bottom has to still be touching there, right? Oops, there we go. Now we can see we don't see nearly as much of it, right? Look at how much has been cut off. So we only see that much of it. So all that right there, we're not seeing anymore, the length. That's what foreshortening is. The closer this object gets to being flat to the camera, the more we're foreshortening, right? The shorter it'll appear. And so what would this look like compared to this? So if we're looking at it from the front view, let's get rid of some of this right here. If we're looking at that object from the front view, we're going to see it at its full length like this, right? And let's say it's a pipe, right? But if it's coming toward us, remember we're cutting off some of it, so it's becoming foreshortened, and it gets a little bit thinner as it goes back into space. So we're going to see it more like that. These are the same object viewed from here versus here, right? That makes sense? So that the arm is actually being foreshortened is my whole point of all that. And I teach all this in my fundamentals of drawing course, right? So here, if we draw it from here, the form has to be foreshortened. So you have to think about from the side view, where's that arm going to be compared to the head, right? So if you have the head here, and then you have the rib cage, and you have the arm, if you have the arm being foreshortened, it's coming out like this, and then it's coming like this. You have to think about the, how big, how long the arm is. Then you can go, okay, well, where does that right there end? Well, it ends, right about, well, I drew my head up a little bit high. My head would be, I would have the ear, and then I would have the jaw coming down, right? So it ends, right about the nose or so. So somewhere right about here is where that is being foreshortened. That's where the end. And then this right here is where the forearm now comes up, right? And then like that. So I got to think about that's where the arm actually ends, and then the forearm comes up. Then I would have, my hands doing whatever they do, and they're being foreshortened too because they're coming toward us, right? So you actually would just have more of a shape like that, and then you'd have the fingers which are being foreshortened, right? Because the fingers are coming toward us, right? And maybe this hand, I don't know, is on top, whatever. Right, you get the idea. I'm just gonna get rid of all that because it looks sloppy, and it's hard to see exactly what I'm doing there. All right, so I don't want to make this video as long as the first one. I can easily go on and talk about a lot more stuff. But yeah, so I think this would be a better pose, and then use the arms out like that. I do like the idea of the pants, so that does work out pretty good. And maybe I can draw that on here really quick. And if I do draw pants on the thing, I like to make a new layer, and I draw right on top of my sketch here. Pants would typically fit more like, right around there for lowriders, and then, for 80s pants up here. So if we started there, well, we obviously have to pull the pants down. Another thing that might be interesting too is what if we just pulled the pants down to like here, and let's go around the form like this, boom, like that, go around the form. What if we made it to where the pants are normally from the backside, but they're squished down, so we have like a lot of, wrinkles in here and here, because we're kind of, bunching the pants up, right? Like that. So what if we're kind of like just pulled them down? They're not like, maybe they're undone in the front. This can lead for some interesting mechanics here for the buttocks, because you can kind of push this butt like where it's kind of being pushed up, and you kind of go like this. You can kind of show that butt cheek kind of being pushed up, and then right here as well, you can kind of show a little bit of the fat like that, maybe, or maybe you can even show it right about here and kind of just, oops, add some shadow there, and maybe show it right about here where it's kind of being pushed up. Right? See what I'm saying? You can kind of play with that. You kind of have that kind of pushed up look, and then you come down here, you can have the pants are more bunched up here, so you're going to have some wrinkles in here, wrinkles here, right? And this would be like where the actual the buttocks of the pants would have been, and the pockets would be all kind of folded up and stuff. You can really figure this out logically, but I would probably look at some references, honestly, for that one. You'd have that middle one, you'd have two over here where the belt goes through. So something like that could be interesting to play with, and kind of just like, push the buttocks up. So that's one idea. And then of course we could just, do something similar to what they have. I'm going to bring that back to full. Get rid of these two things for right now. Like so. Is this a new layer? Yeah, it is. So let's go ahead and just do this really fast here. Remember, think around the form. And I kind of like how it's showing the butt there. So in order to do what they did though, because they kind of drew it, the pants have to be pulled down a little bit in order for this to happen, right? The way they have it, how low it is. So let's kind of go, I'm trying to think how. I want to see how much of the butt I want to show. So let's go like, we'll come up something very similar to what they have. Boom, like that. Notice I take that and I wrap it around the form. Right? I'm going around. I'm thinking it goes around the form of where it attaches to the other side. Like so. And I'm going to have this side be the main. Yeah, that'll be the main thing that goes up like that. That side will connect there. have a few buttons. Might be able to see a little bit of the top of that, the top thickness as well. You have the loops here. And I won't be able to see, I can't, because it's not possible to have this part like match into the butt like they have there if we keep this proper anatomy. Like, so if I want the crotch part of the pants, even if they're lowrider pants, I want the crotch part to kind of, this video is turning out to be just as long as the other one. If I want this to be here where this, where the buttock is, I want the line to be the buttock itself. It's just kind of not possible unless I pull the pants up higher. So I'm going to have to come up higher like this. All right, see if I want that to be the natural, right there. I want that to be the natural line, the crease in the buttock there. But then you're not seeing as much of the butt. But you have to do that. So I think that would be a better, because if I have it down here, the problem is the wrinkles going to be below the butt. You're not really going to see that butt shape. But we'll go ahead and do that, I guess, just to show you what I'm talking about. See, this would kind of be a wrinkle here. You'd have like a wrinkle there. Some wrinkles here, some wrinkles here. Come down here, some wrinkles. Leg wrinkles like this. That would be tight. We have wrinkles here. Like that, and then let's go here and delete some of this here so we can kind of see what's happening. And so you see, I wouldn't see as much of the buttock. But actually, I guess you still see a good amount, but where the natural part of the butt would be here, I don't see that. And so instead I'm seeing, let's get rid of that line. I'm seeing like this unnatural thing there. I could maybe add another wrinkle though, like up this way. So it kind of shows where that would have been, and then you kind of add some shadow, into the pants. And add some shadow where all the wrinkles are and stuff. I'm just doing this very quickly, but you get the idea. Now I'd make this line a lot darker. So something like that. Make sure you come down here, follow along with that. Sure to add the things, and then you have the pockets here. Then we can add that little fold they have here, little slit. Maybe a little bit of a shadow because it's going to kind of come like that. And add a little bit of shadow back into where the other butt is. Right, so something like that. And then I see if I can come back and add that detail back in there if I wanted to. Right, so that's it. If you have enjoyed this at all, and if you think it's better than the first one, let me know. I think I just got off too many tangents on the first one, and in this one I think I nailed it down more to the information that I really wanted to be there without going off too much onto tangents, and hopefully everything is going to be very helpful. And also I didn't want to deviate too much from the pose they already did. The one I did is more like this here, so I just did a quick sketch of how I think could improve this whole entire image. But either way, it still looks nice, and yeah, so really, really nice job, and just a few little corrections and look at the difference it makes. All right, if you enjoyed this at all, do me a favor and leave a comment. Like just any comment at all, even if it's just, hey, I'm leaving a comment, or thumbs up, or just anything, right? Just any sort of comment helps the algorithms and helps more people learn. That is, if you've learned from this, pay it forward, leave a comment so other people can learn from it, right? Because you leaving a comment helps other people see this video. Thank you. I'll see you next time.